For the first time in months, I looked at her and saw not my wife, not my betrayer, but a human being, flawed, scared, aching to be seen. We didn't fix everything that night. But we started talking again, not about blame, but about pain. Over the next few months, things changed. Not perfectly, but honestly. We went to therapy. We talked more. Sometimes it was uncomfortable, raw truths always are, but slowly, something softened between us. I learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's actions, it's about freeing yourself from carrying the weight of bitterness. One evening, we sat by the lake where we used to go when we were dating. The sunset spilled gold across the water, and for a moment, the world felt still. She turned to me and said, "I don't deserve you." I smiled faintly. Maybe not. But love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. She reached for my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't pull away. But life isn't a straight road. 2 years later, we separated, not out of anger, but because we realized we'd grown in different directions. The love was still there, but it had changed form, gentler, quieter, more like gratitude than passion. We remained friends. She remarried a few years later to a good man. I attended her wedding, not because I had to, but because I wanted her to be happy. That night, standing beneath the stars outside the reception, I felt something profound, peace. I had forgiven her. And in doing so, I had forgiven myself, for not being enough once, for holding on too tightly, for breaking quietly instead of healing loudly. Today, when people ask if I believe in love, I smile and say, yes. But not the kind that never breaks, the kind that heals after it does. Because love isn't perfect. It's not immune to weakness or mistakes. It's about grace, the grace to see the brokenness in someone else and still choose compassion. And sometimes, that compassion is letting go. Lena's betrayal once shattered me. But that pain became the doorway to something greater, understanding. I found my voice again, my strength, my peace. Now, when I write about the quiet heroes, the ones who forgive without being asked, who love without ownership, who walk away without hate. Because at the end of it all, it's not the heartbreak that defines us. It's what we do after. Final message. Sometimes life's deepest wounds become our greatest teachers. What feels like the end may simply be the beginning of a kinder, truer version of yourself. Love, when it's honest, even if it hurts, will always lead you back to who you were meant to be. A week passed. She started staying late at work more often. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to be the man who trusted his wife, who didn't let insecurity poison his heart. But one evening, when she said she'd be home by 8 and it was nearly midnight, I drove to her office. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for a few cars, and hers. Through the big glass windows, I saw her sitting inside, talking to the same man from the café. He leaned close, smiling. She laughed, touching his arm. I didn't barge in. I didn't shout or make a scene. I just sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then I drove home. When she finally walked through the door around 1 a.m, smelling faintly of wine and perfume, I asked, "Did you have a good time?" She froze, then sighed. "Ethan, please. Don't start." "I'm not starting anything," I said softly. "I'm just asking if you had a good time." She shook her head. "You always twist things. It's exhausting." That was the night I realized that love doesn't always end with shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it just fades quietly until one person's fighting for two. The next morning, I packed a small bag, not to leave, but to breathe. I went to stay with my brother, Daniel, for a few days. He's the kind of guy who says little but listens deeply. When I told him what happened, he didn't say, "Leave her," or "Fight for her." He just said, "You need to find out who you are without her for a bit." And he was right. Those few days away changed something in me. I started going for walks again, revisiting places I'd loved before marriage, quiet parks, old bookstores, the lake where I used to sketch. I found an old journal from years ago and realized I'd stopped writing after our wedding. Somewhere between bills, routines, and silent dinners, I'd lost the part of myself that used to dream. So, I started writing again. Not about her. About me. About hope, regret, and forgiveness. A week later, Lena called. Her voice sounded smaller, unsure. "Ethan, are you coming home?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Are you still flirting innocently?" There was a pause. Then she whispered, "I made a mistake." When I came home that evening, the house felt different. She was in the kitchen, eyes red. There was a half-empty wine glass on the counter, and for once, no phone in her hand. "I didn't sleep with him," she said immediately. "But I wanted to feel wanted again. You used to look at me like I mattered, Ethan. Lately, it's like we're strangers." It hurt, because she wasn't entirely wrong. Somewhere along the way, I had buried myself in work, in the dull safety of routine. But still, that didn't justify betrayal. "I understand loneliness," I said quietly. "But you can't fix emptiness by breaking someone else." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry." Cheating wife said, "Don't be dramatic, it's just innocent flirting," as she gave her number to. I still remember the day I realized something inside me had gone quiet. It wasn't anger, not really. It was the sound of something breaking so softly that no one but me could hear it. My name is Ethan Cole, and this isn't a story about betrayal, it's a story about rediscovery, forgiveness, and the strange, painful beauty of letting go. It started on a gray Thursday afternoon. I'd left work early, a rare thing for me. My wife, Lena, loved surprises, and I thought it would be nice to show up at the café near her office, grab her favorite coffee, and walk home together. We'd been married 8 years. Not perfect years, but good ones, or so I thought. When I got to the café, I saw her before she saw me. She was standing at the counter, laughing, her head tilted just slightly the way she did when she was trying to charm someone. A man stood next to her, handsome in that easy, careless way. He was saying something that made her smile, really smile, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Then I saw her reach into her purse, pull out a pen, and scribble something on a napkin. She slid it across the counter to him. He looked pleased. My stomach twisted, but I tried to breathe. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe it was nothing. When she turned around and saw me, her eyes widened just a fraction, just enough for me to notice, but then she covered it with a bright, practiced grin. "Ethan. What are you doing here?" "I thought I'd surprise you," I said, holding out the coffee I'd gotten her favorite way, extra foam, 2 sugars, and a splash of vanilla. She blinked, then laughed, taking it from me like everything was fine. "Well, that's sweet of you." The man beside her gave me a polite nod before walking off. I watched him go, watched the napkin disappear into his jacket pocket. When we were finally alone, I asked quietly, "Who was that?" She rolled her eyes in that way that made me feel suddenly small. "Don't be dramatic, Ethan. It's just innocent flirting." God, you're so serious sometimes. Something about that sentence, innocent flirting, echoed in my mind long after she said it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. My mind ran in circles. What did she mean by innocent? Why did she give him her number? And why did my heart ache so much if it was supposedly nothing? The truth is, I wasn't angry because she flirted. I was angry because somewhere along the way, we'd stopped seeing each other. We used to talk about everything, dreams, fears, little things that didn't matter to anyone else. But lately, every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd respond with one-word answers. When I tried to hold her hand, she'd find an excuse to check her phone. That night, as she slept, I whispered something she didn't hear: when did we stop trying?